Hey, welcome to this episode of Life on the Streets, the greatest show on earth. I'm your host, Rick,
I'm Tom.
and we have a fun episode today. But before we get going on that, I kind of want to ask you. So, Tom,
Hmm.
we've all been seeing all the news and everything that's going on around the country with this whole immigration and ICE thing,
Yeah.
um,
Yes,
and
we have.
just some of the antics and the things that you just can't make up and you just shake your head. For
Hmm.
example, what I'm finding really funny right now is when you're seeing is anybody now who actually looks like they're employed,
Hmm.
if they go to the store or they go to a restaurant and they're
Yeah.
now being surrounded by all these activists and agitators and heckled and accosted because they're all now ICE agents. So if you look employed, you now work for ICE.
But
If you drive a
or if you're a hunter,
or if you're a hunter,
and you wear camouflage,
oh man, you
you
drive
know.
you work for ICE.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
drive an SUV,
You work right.
you work for ICE. So I was just thinking about this, and I've got a solution.
What's that?
So now everybody should dress like you live in your mom's basement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should drive a Prius or a Subaru.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is for ICE too.
Yeah.
Drive like you're unemployed or dress like you're unemployed, like you live in your mom's basement. Okay.
Yeah. They need to change tactics.
Oh, yeah. And drive Subarus and Priuses. Nobody's ever going to blow a whistle on you.
Hmm.
Okay. You
This is
know,
true. This is true.
and use diversionary tactics.
Dye your
Ha-
hair blue.
yeah. Have agents dressed as they're unemployed, living in their mom's basement, driving a Subaru or a Prius. Have them pull up to your target location and get out and start screaming, "Ice out, ice out,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And hold up signs. We're evacuating
Hmm.
illegal immigrants
Yeah. Everybody
before ICE gets here.
load up in this van.
Yeah,
And
everybody get in.
we'll
We're
get you out of the
moving you to
neighborhood.
safety.
We'll get you out of the neighborhood. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
It'll be awesome. You know.
So I mean, it's not like these people are the brightest. They're gonna fall for it. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
again, they're gonna be like, "Oh, you go, you go." They'll probably clear the way for you.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It just makes you shake your head
It does.
sometimes,
It's
but
it's this whole thing's gotten absurd.
it is. And unfortunately, I would actually love to see this happen in front of me because I haven't seen it yet. But you hear about them. But how funny would that be?
I know. Hey, I'm curious if these agitators and stuff get 401ks,
Oh yeah.
and do they get dental and health as well? Or, I mean, because they're paid. So,
So
I'm curious, like,
so if you
but,
get hurt as an
be a good
agitator,
kid. Is there work comp?
yeah.
I don't know. There might be work comp. I don't know.
I mean,
What's the benefit?
actually,
What's the benefit package to being an agitator, protesting agitator? I don't even know what the actual career path terminology is for being a paid agitator.
I don't know, but it makes me ask a question. So I don't know if it's a state law or federal law. I'd have to look into it, but I think it's probably federal law. So under labor laws, right? If you're an employer with more than 500 employees, I think it's actually more than 50,
Uh,
but uh, more than 50 employees, don't you have to provide health insurance? So if
I-
you're paying
I don't know
hundreds
how that works.
and hundreds of agitators,
Kind of out of my wheelhouse, but it
aren't they now technically
seems reasonable.
employees? And shouldn't these people who are funding this, shouldn't they be forced to provide health insurance?
Yeah. And realistically, I think they should form unions as well, because you think about it,
Well,
and start really looking at their working conditions. Right now they're in Minnesota. It's freaking cold and they're outside. That's a pretty shitty working condition.
well, not only
Slipping
that,
on the ice, you're falling down.
it's OSHA. I mean, that's an OSHA issue. And
Are they OSHA compliant? I don't think so.
if you're getting hit, if you're
So-
getting hit by OC and smoke grenades and flashbangs,
That's horrible.
I'm thinking that OSHA should be stepping in
Yeah.
and they should really be like citing the employers.
Yes, they need a collective bargaining agreement.
Well,
That's
yeah.
that's what these agitators need. So they don't have to work under those conditions in the cold like that. Not in the wintertime. Come on, change it to the summertime when you're going to be in Minnesota. I mean,
So then
let's
the
pay
other,
attention here. So we're not getting people with frostbite, hypothermia, you know?
well, here's the other question. So if the employer, the financiers, right, come back and say, oh no, these guys are all 1099, they're contract workers, right?
Mm, mm,
Oh,
mm.
okay. So where's the contracts?
Yeah.
They file these with the
Yeah.
with the government. Do they have tax IDs? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that there's going to be a lot of issues here.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
is more than just, you
Yeah.
know, now it's more than just protesting it. It's actually like employment.
Yeah. But I bet you they get to write off a lot of stuff. How much mileage do they write off for tailing ice around?
How do you write that on your tax return?
I don't know.
500 miles, you know, rioting and disrupting ICE operations.
Yeah. 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 And I don't know. Would the IRS see that as a legitimate tax write-off?
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
I don't
It's
know.
very interesting to think about, when you get paid for something like that.
And then technically, now I don't know if, I don't want to start rumors, but I saw this in the news. So I'm assuming it's probably somewhat some facts and probably a lot of it not, right? Because we all know that the news is not exactly credible these days.
This is true.
But
This is true.
there was some stories that came out that the lieutenant governor of Minnesota
Mhm. I heard
was
that.
actually the dispatcher,
Yeah, I heard
right,
that.
for all these agitators and was directing activists and protesters to spots where ICE was conducting operations. And since these we're showing that most of these people are paid, right? Are they not now employees of the state?
Ooh, I don't know. That could be. Interesting.
And if they are employees of the state, isn't there now going to be, doesn't that kind of fall under corruption? Or,
Could be.
I
I don't
mein,
know.
there's just so many questions, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm thinking
I-
that we've worked for government our whole career, right?
Mm,
If the government participates in stuff like this and it's below board, it's not absolutely legal, or they're not following the law, that usually ends up in a corruption investigation.
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Uh,
does.
I don't know. I don't know.
You know,
So I don't have the answers. I'm
yeah.
definitely not a lawyer, and I'm not the smartest man in the room, but it makes me say, what the hell?
The whole thing's a total shit show.
Yeah, it is. It
It's
is.
just a shit
You
show.
just gotta laugh. It's kind of like a train wreck, man. You just gotta have the popcorn. You're sitting
I
back
know,
and
man.
just
Yeah,
watching.
absolutely. It's a
You
total-
can't look away.
What in the hell is happening? And it's something new every day.
Oh,
It's
it
something
is.
new
It
every day.
is.
It really is.
It's just
Yeah.
absurd.
It's
I just have to
insane.
laugh. I'm watching these people accost other people,
Yeah.
accusing them
Yeah.
of being ICE just
Just
because
regular
they
civilians.
actually look like they're employed.
No,
It's
man.
just
Dude,
what
I'm
is
just
that
doing my job, man.
those electrical engineers that were accosted in that restaurant
Mhm.
because they actually dressed professionally.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Yeah. Pretty sure it's just not federal agents that wear suits and ties.
Or I don't even think they were wearing suits and ties. I think they were just wearing business casual.
Oh. Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah.
It's even worse.
I mean, wear Birkenstocks,
Yeah.
You're
just trying to go to
jeans,
lunch, dress
and
nice.
don't shave, don't comb your hair,
Yeah.
Do all that stuff and you're golden.
Yeah. No shit.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so,
Here, smell my armpits. I'm not an ICE agent.
oh my God.
I haven't washed for 5 days.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on that. Okay. So having said that, today we're going to talk about a couple of things that are a little more serious. Okay. Looking at what's been going on, particularly in Minnesota, but it's actually been happening around the country,
Yeah.
is with the customs and ICE, they're doing these targeted operations.
Yeah. Minnesota just has the spotlight right now.
Right. They do. It's their turn in the bucket.
Yeah.
But with all the stuff going on, I mean, these are still what we would consider tactical operations, right? They got to have an operations plan.
Yeah.
You would think that if they're
they
doing
do.
targeted operations, they should have an operations plan.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I get when they first started doing this, maybe there were some, there were unknowns and things they hadn't thought of, you know. But when you do an operational plan, you know this, I know this, anybody who's done operational plans knows this, um, is first of all, you start looking at your your threat matrix, right?
Mhm.
And your risk assessments. Okay.
Right.
And what are we running into? And how are we going to mitigate those, right? How do we plan for those?
Right.
Is that occurring in these operations?
I would venture to say it to an extent it is, and it probably is even more so now because I would say like when they're first starting out, generally speaking, their threat matrix probably involves the target that they're going after,
Right,
right?
right,
What's the threat potential there and what's the risk there and whatnot. But then now with all these protesters and agitators coming on and moving into the area, now you have to now your threat assessment has changed.
right,
And now your primary threat is probably not your target anymore. Now it's, all the protesters and agitators.
right.
And then I would, and so I would venture to say that they've had to kind of pivot on that and how they're doing their risk assessments, and their intelligence gathering now as well, because it's not necessarily the intelligence on the target or the target location. It's now basically doing intelligence on an entire city
Right.
and what the reaction is going to be from these protesters and agitators if you move into a particular neighborhood or
Right.
suburb or whatever the case may be. So I think it's just turned into this enormous ordeal for these guys, and what they're dealing with.
Well, my
And
question would be is,
it,
are they trained for this? Because that I think that's the bigger question because,
right,
you know, I think they're operating outside their areas of expertise, right?
right,
So when you're doing an ops plan, I mean,
right,
anybody can plan a very narrow targeted operation. I'm going to go arrest, you know, John P, right? For whatever. Okay.
mhm,
But how are they utilizing their resources? Like I mean, technically, and we've all seen it now, it's turning into this. These are tactical operations.
oh well, yeah,
Okay. So, and you and I both know that when we were planning tactical operations, you know, all our ops plans were all intelligence driven,
hmm,
right? So if you have time to design a targeted operations, you should have time to be gathering intelligence and
right,
formulating ops plans based on that intelligence.
right,
And how are you doing that, right? So we now know, based on what we've seen and what the public has seen, is that they have this huge network of people who are spotting for these protesters and agitators, right? And they show up and they blow their whistles and honk their horns and do whatever it is
right,
that they're going to do. I get that. Okay.
right.
So what is the federal agencies, ICE and Border Patrol, what are they doing to combat this, right? What are they doing to prevent this from occurring? We've all watched videos where they're doing an arrest, they're at a specific location, and all these agitators and protesters, they're allowing them into what I would consider their hot zone. They're allowing them to get within, you know,
Mhm.
walking, not even walking distance. I'm talking striking distance of their hot zone. If you know this is occurring and they have all this data now, they know this is what's going to happen, right? How are they planning for this? Are they using, scout teams who are setting up further out, right? Watching for incoming agitators and caravans so that they can notify the arrest teams that this is occurring. And what resources are they pushing their perimeters out to where, they covertly park, set on the streets, all access ways. And then once the operation is underway, once they hit their red line and then they're on target, right?
Mhm.
They're starting to block off access further out where people can't get to where the arrest teams are.
Right.
Are they doing these types of things and having planned routes of exfil, right?
Mhm.
And having multiple. So having your primary, your secondary, maybe a third route, right? Your Alamo, if you will. You know, are they doing any of these things? Are they using their resources wisely? What do you think?
Well, I think primarily, and I'd like to give, some grace to these guys,
Yeah, absolutely.
but I think that right, what ends up happening is when they go to these targeted locations and they're going after, John P, the bad guy, that everything then just goes to total shit.
Yeah,
Because that's when all the agitators show up and everything, and then it just turns into nothing but chaos. And like you said, it kind of goes back to the training aspect and whatnot. Like, how much crowd control training are they doing with these guys? And should they be bringing in a separate crowd control element to deal with the crowds while they're affecting the arrest, and then moving out from there? And but in my thought is that right now it's a heels dug in kind of thing
yeah,
on both sides of this whole deal. I think the best bet right now would be for ICE to pull out of Minnesota and let the FBI focus on the corruption and the fraud cases that are going on. Pull ICE out of there, rethink tactics on how you're going to go after these guys, and based on the intelligence that you have, because now they've been there for a while, right? I mean, this has been going on for what, a month and a half or so, maybe
yeah,
longer
yeah, easy.
in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But so you've gained all this intelligence. Um, so utilize that on how you can now go in and affect the arrests that you need to affect, utilizing different tactics, because the tactics that you're using right now are not necessary. I mean, they're not necessarily working. They're creating
Right.
too much of a problem and too much of an issue. You back off and say, hey, we'll deal with Minnesota a little later. Let's go do some other targeted stuff in another location.
Right.
But even at doing that, maybe take a pause for a little bit, examine what's been happening, look at what's been going on, and utilize the intelligence that you've gained, and then rethink the tactics, and then utilize new tactics to go after these people, because they're all criminals. So
Right. I mean, they violated the
we
law.
got to go after them. So
They have violated
figure
the
out
law. There's
how
no
to do that.
question about that.
Yeah, you're at a point where you're at a point of, like we used to say, you're at a point of diminishing returns
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
As far as ICE goes, because you're up against people that are being paid to be at these agitators and do these things and push these guys and push them and push them and push them. And sooner or later, things are going to happen that are going to go south. And it's already happened. I mean, it's happened a couple times, right? Where people have lost their lives because they were pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And then, bad shit happened. And then,
Right.
And now they're in the spotlight for the bad stuff, for, the shootings and whatnot. So I personally think they just need to pull back and worry about analyzing what transpired there, what they did good, what they did bad, do a serious hardcore debrief on it, and look at changing tactics moving forward in whatever city they go to, because no matter where they go to, this shit's going to happen, because all these agitators that are in Minnesota right now that are staying in somebody's basement or wherever they're staying, because they don't fricking live there, they came in from somewhere, they're just going to move to the next city that ICE is going to go do targeted operations.
Exactly.
And really, I think that maybe it's a tactic of, you just don't fricking tell anybody where you're going, and
Well,
just, and
well, that was
you
the
do
other
all
thing
your
is,
intel prior to, and then you send small teams, like 4 dudes, after each one of these people that you're going after. So it's not a major presence. You just get in, you snatch them, you hook them, you get them out, and you get them processed and
so
whatnot.
I like that. I mean, it's that sort of whack-a-mole, have them chasing, when they hear that ICE is over here, so they're moving over here, but then you hit an operation over here, you get, so keep them guessing, keep them running, right?
Or you're already gone,
Or you're out.
because you already hooked your guy, and now they show up 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late, whatever, and you're already out you've already beat feet and had.
Right. But that all takes coordinating,
No, it does.
takes coordination. They need to be using their time wisely, right? They need to be gathering intel. I mean, they should have enough data right now in Minnesota alone just to
Oh, you
look
would
at
think.
patterns, right? So
You would think.
when we hit a targeted operation, we get on target, how long is it taking for somebody, right?
Mhm.
Um, to notice, start blowing the whistle, start notifying people, and how long is it taking people to get here? So we start looking at those and we can start building our ops plan around that, right? We know that we have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
So what are we doing now to impede their ability to get in and disrupt our operation? You know, again, setting out bigger perimeters, right? Security perimeters, not letting people in. Or as you said, maybe doing this a little more low key, covert
Mhm.
wise, and doing multiple so they stretch their resources
Yeah.
thin, right? Start feeding them wrong intelligence. One of the things that I noticed, and I thought that was great that you brought this up, is they have a tendency to say our next target is we're going to be targeting Minnesota,
Right. Right.
right? And we're going to be hitting Minneapolis and we're going to be flooding Minneapolis. Well, that gives your adversary lots of
prepare.
vital information,
Yeah.
right?
A time to prepare.
Time to prepare, and they start directing their resources there.
Mhm.
So, maybe start putting out there, using some OPSEC here, some
Mhm.
operational security, and maybe putting out misleading intel,
Yeah.
right? Make them start guessing, make them start having to react rather than be the action that we're reacting to,
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's all these things. I've watched some of these videos, of things that are occurring, and especially in these things that we just saw, over the last few weeks or month, um, where nothing looks coordinated. I mean, you have all these groups of agitators showing up. You have a bunch of agents on scene, right?
Mhm.
But it doesn't look like any of them actually know their role or what the mission is because they're sort of all over the place and they're not working as a coordinated unit.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It
And
does.
so they're, and we saw, one agent is running off over here to deal with an agitator, and so this person's alone, right? And then you've got other things going on over here. But there's no coordinated operation. It doesn't look like to me. Now I could be wrong because I'm not in those planning sessions, and I don't know what their ops plans say, and I don't know what their roles, assignments are.
Mhm.
But it doesn't look coordinated to me. It looks very chaotic and uncoordinated.
It does. But I would venture to say, and I think uh, because, things that I've seen and read and whatnot is that a lot of these agitators are getting training on what to do and how to do it, how to disrupt the ICE
Right.
operations. And the reality is what I mean, for me, if I was doing it and I was in charge of a bunch of agitators or protesters, I would divide and conquer. I would send people at different groups of the agents, because if they're out, you got two agents maybe over here, a couple guys over here, some over here trying to do. I would send people at each one of them at the same time to cause that division in their response so that they can't unify and give a unified front against the agitators, which then you split those forces up. And then it does look like it's nothing but chaos because
Right.
it's the agitator created chaos that's what they're being trained to do.
But do you know for a fact? I mean, I'm asking, do you know that that's not what they're doing?
No, no, I mean, no,
Yeah.
nothing's known. I mean,
So, I
nobody
mean,
is,
it
but I mean,
seems to me like they're the protesters, the paid agitators, these, what do they call them? Community response agitators
yeah,
or
whatever
groups.
whatever.
They seem more coordinated than the federal response does.
Right, because well, you got
So,
you think about it, Rick, you if you go up, any bad guy that we've ever gone up against, right? Like we always say, bad guy has to say what's going on,
absolutely.
right? And who's more limited by their for their response or what they can even initially do the bad guy or the good guys?
Right.
The good guys, big time.
Of course.
So if I go in as an agitator, I could do so much more than what those guys can do back to me,
Right.
that I can disrupt a ton of shit just by being an asshole.
Right.
Right?
So
So
where I'm looking at this though, and I'll use some examples here, is I look at operations that we've done, right? Specifically when we were doing high risk takedowns, we were doing these coordinated federal takedowns,
Mhm.
right? When we're doing, operations for undercover narcotics stuff, right? So the intelligence gathering and the operational planning that goes into these operations is very in depth, right? We're looking for, you know, friendlies, to our bad guy. We're looking at, we're putting up sniper, intelligence units, right? Usually the snipers aren't there as a sniper overwatch per se, right? But they are there for intelligence gathering, right? And we'll put them out there multiple days in a row to gather intelligence, right? So we can see the patterns that are going on there, who they're associated with, who's friendly to them, who's not, right? We're gathering that stuff. And now I look at military operations, right? When they're going in and they're seizing, or they're going in and securing a location, just like they just did with Maduro, right? Um, they go in, they've done tons of planning, lots of intelligence gathering, and then they go in and they have this defensive perimeter set up, right? So,
Right.
uh, these are how operations should be taking place.
Well, that's
When you just send us a whole bunch of guys, and I mean, you can send a lot of guys, but they're all consolidated into one spot with no real mission, or I shouldn't say mission, no real um, um, guidance, with no real role. Each person doesn't have a specific role. I mean, when we would do operations, we had guys that specific job was is they stood the outside perimeter. They let nobody in, right? And they were in place before we ever arrived on target.
right. I think the issue with some of that is that, like I said, I they could do their initial intelligence on their target location,
Yeah,
and that's going to be who's friendly to this guy right in the
right.
immediate area and whatnot. However, what they don't know is if and or when all these protesters and agitators are going to show up. So they have this anomaly on the intelligence aspect that could just show up, or maybe not. I'd be curious to find out how many operations that ICE has done in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or the whole state of Minnesota, whatever, where they've actually gone in, got arrested their target, moved out without not having any response from any of the agitators or protesters, versus how many the agitators and protesters do show up. And so I think it's a bit different. Like when we were doing operations, it was generally like you said, like we looked for who the friendlies were to
Right.
the bad guy. We didn't have the anomaly of
Right. And
these
you're right.
protesting assholes to show up.
And
And
I am sort of oversimplifying
yeah,
it.
and then in the military ops, yeah, they gained intelligence and whatnot, and they put out dudes. I mean, I don't know how that operation went down, and
Well, and that's just one
they,
operation. I'm just throwing it out there
right.
as an
But
example.
what I'm saying is, I don't know how that operation went down, and who all was involved in it. And I don't think that they've actually confirmed the units that were part of it. But I gotta imagine it was the tier 1 guys that were actually snatching this dude up, snatching.
Well, they've
Maduro up.
confirmed that
And
was
probably, and my guess would be probably a ranger element that was their blocking force and to hold the perimeter and
yeah,
whatnot.
probably.
And that becomes like, you know what? If you have assholes show up that want to protect Maduro, you just shoot them. I mean, that's
Well,
rules of engagement on that, which totally different.
So
But
and I don't want to compare apples and
it's
oranges there.
apples to oranges at
I'm
all,
talking
but
about the planning portion.
right. But I think that's part of the problem that they have with their planning portion is that maybe they're doing their intelligence on like a normal operation where these are not at all normal.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why I say
what is normal though? That's like that thing I always hate when we
Well,
call it a routine
right.
stop or
I
a
would say
routine
like,
contact. I hate that word because what's normal? Nothing is ever the same.
well, it's not, but generally speaking, if you're doing your ops plan, it's generally done in the same way, right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
you're going to do your intelligence, you're going to do your risk assessment, you're going to do your threat assessment,
You're going to do your planning,
you're going to do your pre-planning, and then you're going to do your planning,
your
and
briefing, making sure everybody knows
right,
their
and all that
jobs, all
stuff,
that stuff.
right? But that's not to say that something can't go wrong
Right.
on target.
Exactly.
Well, I think with this, it goes so wrong for these
Every
guys
time.
every time because these
Well, at
people
least every
are,
time we've seen it in the
yeah,
news. So, like you
because,
said, we don't know
but
which
yeah,
one,
like I said,
how many are
there may be
going off without a
a
hitch.
number of their operations that go off without a hitch,
Yeah.
but all the ones that, that they're putting all over the news and, on social media and all this other stuff are the ones that there's just a gaggle of protesters there and agitators. So that creates an issue for them as well. And that's why I go back to saying like, okay, this is a different scenario than what's normally takes place. They need to do the intelligence on this, the intelligence gathering on these people as well, and maybe back up a little bit, take a step back, take a breath, and reevaluate your tactics on what we're doing and what you're doing going forward in other operations in other places, especially with OPSEC. Like, why the hell are you letting everybody know where you're going? Like, stop
Well,
doing
that
that.
I never understood. But
Stop doing that.
here's another question. And
Yeah.
again, folks, we don't have the answers. We're just sort of brainstorming. I'm just
Yeah.
looking at this. Tom's just looking at it. We're looking at based on our experience in our role. So we're not there. We're not in their shoes. We're not experiencing what they're experiencing. But I have to ask myself, okay, so you've got Border Patrol, you've got ICE, they're going out and they're doing these things because they are a federal law enforcement agency. I don't care what anybody on, on the fringe wants to say, they are law enforcement. Okay. Um, and because they're federal law enforcement, um, they should be getting supported. Now, Minneapolis PD isn't supporting them. Okay.
No,
You know
definitely
what?
not.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly, but it is what it is at this point. So let's move beyond that. Let's not focus on that. But what I am saying is you have a federal law enforcement uh, element here, ICE or Border Patrol or both. Why are they not utilizing resources from other federal law enforcement agencies to help them who actually do these routinely? And I'm talking DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, right? Who do these operations, these takedowns for other criminals, right? So that help them do their planning, help them put an operational plan in place that's going to be successful and that's going to, prevent a lot of this stuff. And here's my thing on this: you don't have to have an army sometimes to do this, right? And maybe if you want to perform this, this operation is having a few of these people, representatives from other agencies, these federal agencies who do this routinely, have them help you guide you or mentor you or tutor you, or maybe even help you run your operation. There's just so many ways that they can do this so that you're not having people who aren't necessarily trained in this trying to run with this, and then cleaning up the mess every time.
I think you would fall into the same problem because
Talk to me.
because the reality is you look at, all right, so you look at DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, who the fuck else,
FBI,
FBI, I guess maybe FBI guys.
Sure,
some of them are pretty high speed and do stuff like that, but they all are going to have the same problem. Are any of those federal agencies actually really trained in crowd control?
No. You're right. I absolutely support what you're saying.
But and the other thing is do they all have I guarantee you they all play from the same playbook when they're doing takedowns, or pretty similar playbooks, except for injecting the agitator protester thing into it.
Yeah.
Like I don't see DEA going out and doing takedowns on cartel members or just those drug dealers that have committed federal crimes that they go after and whatnot. that have protesters and agitators.
You're right. You're
constantly.
right. It is an,
So
it is
I
an
think it's-
absolute unique dynamic.
Right. So I think it's such a unique dynamic that's where it's time to take a breath, pull back, analyze
And I
things,
think that sometimes
and you need to take a tactical pause.
tactical pause, a
You need to take a
tactical
tactical
retreat
pause
for a few and regroup.
and regroup and go, okay, how did we dismantle these paid protesters and paid agitators? How do we dismantle that aspect of it so that we can actually fulfill what our obligation to the country is and to the citizens, and be able to affect our role as federal law enforcement officers.
Right.
Because the ultimately, you've got to do something about these people.
Well, and I
get it
know that
because-
they've talked
because
about
it's hard,
investigating,
which
because there is a difference, and I'm a staunch believer in everybody's First Amendment right
Right,
to,
yeah.
to protest peacefully.
I agree.
There is a difference between peaceful protest, okay, and non-peaceful rioting and interference.
Yes, I agree.
So they're two different things.
They are.
If you want to stand on my perimeter and hold signs and chant, hey,
Fine.
I applaud you. I will stand there and I will support you 100%.
And
But if you want to show up at my perimeter and try and breach my perimeter,
right.
right, and interfere and use violence and intimidation tactics, that's not peaceful protest.
No, but a lot of it too, Rick, I think is that when you got these guys that are getting paid to do this and getting paid to be the agitator and the complete asshole on these things, it ends up, especially if you have multiple of them at the same scene. And then you have the people that are like, hey, we're just here to protest
Right.
these immigration laws or whatever it is. Then what happens is those paid agitators and those assholes create a mob mentality with these other people, because we've all seen that. Anybody in law enforcement has seen a mob mentality happen. And then that creates the issue, because now you have those people that are just your normal, everyday, protester that just, wants to protest shit or whatever because they don't like things.
Right.
That are the peaceful kind of people. But
Well,
then they get turned into this, this person that now has become a more violent protester because they get into the mob mentality.
They do. And so I think back to when we were dealing with George Floyd stuff. And I remember being out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're out there with our teams and we're watching, and you can see the agitators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And standard, riot protocol is you want to extract the agitators, right? So at this level, because of where it's at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, like when I was talking about the George Floyd, a lot of them were peaceful, but a lot of them were not, right? You start to identify the agitators. And this here, and I don't know that they're not doing this, and I heard that this has been discussed, and I don't know where it's at because I'm not privy to this information. Nobody calls me up and says, "Hey, Rick, let me tell you what we're going to do."
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're thinking. Nobody cares what I think. Okay. But when you have paid agitators who are committing criminal offenses, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got RICO.
Mm-hmm.
They're being paid to commit crimes and interfere with law enforcement. Start looking at not just the agitators that are there, but who's financing this stuff. I mean, and I heard this thrown out there, and I think it's a brilliant idea if you can do it. Is start looking at them for a RICO case.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is you have to. I mean, you got to dismantle these organizations that are paying people to be the paid agitators and the protesters, right? Because until that's done, you're not effectively going to be able to do the law enforcement job that you're being paid to do, or being requested to do by most of this country. You're not able to do it, and you're not able to do it effectively because these people are disrupting what you're trying to do. So if you don't break this down, you're not really going to be effective over here. I mean, it's like anything. If you don't take down a cell, a terrorist cell, then you're not going to be effective at preventing the crime that they're going to commit. Right.
Right.
You got to take these people, you got to take these people down and hook them up and arrest them and charge them for some serious shit.
Right.
And, you know, round them all up, you know, put them in prison for 5 years. And by that time, all these law enforcement efforts should be handled and you're good to go.
Well,
Then what are they going to protest?
you know,
The fact that they were in jail?
right. You know,
No.
again, we don't know.
No.
But
I mean-
I'm looking at this from a practicality point of view is, you know, I agree with you. Let's bring the tempo down a little bit, the
Mhm.
temperature. Let's pull these guys out for a little bit. Let things mellow out, let things calm down,
Mhm.
right? And explore other options. But here's, I think, part of the other problem is we've got a problem, and it's occurring kind of from all angles and all sides here, is we have this whole misinformation campaign going on,
Mhm.
right? We have it coming from the agitators, right? We have it coming from politicians.
Mhm.
We have it coming from our government, right? One of the things that, you know, I'm full on, you know, be transparent about something like, you know, I'll take the this last shooting of the Petrie, right? Is
Yeah.
it PP?
Petty, I think.
Petty? You know, when we rush to make a statement, right? Something happens, and I know we want to get information out there, and people are going to create their own information if you don't provide it to them, right? And that's
Yeah.
what's happening,
Mhm.
right? Or the agitators are going to put out false information, and they're going to start doing that. But don't dig your heels in on making comments that you can't back up, right? And for example, is that he approached federal agents, you know, brandishing a firearm. He wasn't brandishing a firearm,
No.
right? He never had his hand on a gun.
No.
So, but let me finish. So don't make statements that you cannot prove, right?
Right.
How about be transparent? Yes, this occurred. We know there was a gun involved. We don't know if it was brandished or not at this point. We don't know what happened. We're looking at it,
Mhm.
you know, and we will keep you informed. But at this time and place, what we're telling you is, you know, these are the facts, limited as they are, that we know at this time.
Mhm.
So don't give them nothing, and don't give them false information.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that doesn't serve a purpose, because then what ends up happening is you lose credibility.
Mhm.
You know, and that's what's happened. And this is, you know, when we say he approached, you know, agents, you know, armed with a firearm. Well, now we're throwing this thing armed with a firearm. Is he really armed with a firearm? Or is he carrying a firearm?
Right.
You know, the words matter.
Oh, they do matter.
They really matter, and we need to think this stuff through before we say this, because what ends up happening, and when it turns out that he wasn't brandishing a firearm, he wasn't holding a firearm, right? He didn't fire his gun. In fact, the gun was in the hand of another agent, right? When it went off. Okay, these are important facts that we didn't know at the time. So don't say that don't give one version of it that you want the facts. You want the information to fit the facts. You right?
Mhm.
You can't force the stuff. You can't create a story and then hope to force the facts or evidence to meet your story. It's not going to happen.
No, you're
And
right.
what ends up happening is they walk away with egg on their face, you know, having to correct themselves or backtrack. But you have these far left agitators now who seize on that moment,
Mhm.
you know, and it's propaganda, but they seize on this, and they now paint you as being dishonest.
Mhm.
You know, you lied, you know, and technically, I guess, can you say they lied if they knew they didn't know the facts, and they put out facts hoping they're true? Technically, yeah, you were dishonest.
Mhm. No. Yeah. No, I agree.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
I mean, I think the dude was a dumbass for bringing a gun to a protest.
Absolutely, that's a
Right.
Darwin Award.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, that's looking that you do stuff like that. You're looking for an issue. You're looking for a problem. You're looking to create a problem.
Well, and that's
he-
supported by
And he did.
Well,
except
but that
that it
is,
got him killed.
that is supported, okay? That is
You know?
supported by the video of him a week earlier
Mhm.
when he's spitting at agents and kicking their car and breaking their car. But what happened a week earlier has nothing to do with what transpired during the shooting.
Right.
What they're connected, right? They may show a pattern of behavior. However, in neither one did he ever brandish a firearm, correct?
Yeah.
Didn't happen. So we need to understand this. And that's not placing blame on the agents there. You know, a shot was fired, the gun went off, your fault, my fault, nobody's fault. It went off. People's perception was is shots are now
They
being
shot.
fired and they shoot.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? We can armchair quarterback this to death,
Oh,
right? But the fact of the matter is we should never have put out information that we didn't know to be true.
Mm.
You know?
Well, in my opinion, there's some ownership with these protesters and agitators in this as well.
There
because
absolutely
they are
is.
creating an environment where these agents are extremely stressed out.
Yes.
They are wound up so tight. It's
Yes.
ridiculous.
Yes.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And when that happens, you become a little jumpy.
You do.
And and that's when bad shit's going to happen, because you jackasses are out there creating this environment for these guys when they're just arresting freaking criminals.
Well-
Let them hook the criminals and move on.
Well, and then you have these
You know?
agitators who may not even on scene, but these influencers,
Yeah.
these people go on and they're calling for the shooting of ICE agents,
Yep.
or Border Patrol agents, and they're calling, stand your ground and all this other stuff that they're just
That's not a
fanning
law. If you have a warrant for your arrest, standing your ground is not a law. You
Right.
can back up. You can go back
But
on.
where I'm going with this is when that's happening, so we're just throwing fuel on the fire here, and then we're all surprised when it really explodes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
what I'm saying here is there's culpability on both sides. The the federal agencies, Department of Homeland Security, um, they need to think about what they're putting out there, right? Utilize better OPSEC when they're doing these operations, but they need to know, not put out information that they don't know to be a fact, right? Give information that you do know. Hey, we know that there was a shooting. We know that he had a firearm on his person.
It's
We
under
don't know
investigation.
anything further.
Yeah, it's under investigation.
It's under investigation, and the facts will come out, and we will,
Release the fact.
we will release the facts when we are able to do that. But we want a fair and impartial investigation. Say these things. Come out when, it's sort of that servant leadership thing when a leader is such a servant leader that they will defend
Mhm.
their guys even to a fault,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes
You
that's
can't.
more detrimental to the guys
Yeah.
than defending, than sitting back and saying, hey, we don't know what happened. Let us figure it out. And we will give you the facts. This is going to be a fair and impartial and transparent investigation. But right now, what we have is very limited. And we have to have the opportunity to look into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if there was wrongdoing occurred, we're going to own
You're
that,
gonna have
and we're
to
going to deal with
deal with
it,
it.
whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
That's what we need to start doing. Cooler heads need to prevail.
Mhm.
We need to stop digging our heels in the sand and throwing up protective barriers and circling the wagons before we even know what's going on.
Yeah. Like I said, maybe take a tactical pause at this point. Figure it out. Yeah. So,
So yeah, I think that there's a lot of stuff that's coming out of this. Like I said, we don't have all the answers. We're sitting here, we're looking at this from our perspective, but there's so many different perspectives out there. And I'll be honest with you, everybody's entitled to their own, thinking, thoughts, feelings about this situation. What I'm saying here is there are some things that we can control
Mhm.
on both sides. Let's start doing that. Let's
Yeah.
bring the temperature down a little bit. I like your idea of let's pull out. Let's let the temperature cool down a little bit here. Let cooler heads prevail.
Mhm.
I know we've dug our heels in the sand, in there, you know, and we're going to stand this ground and this is the hill we're going to die on.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking, again, like I
Probably
said
not.
before, I think back to Custer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In hindsight, do you think he would have said, you know what, we are not going to charge into 2,000 Sioux?
Probably would be a bad idea.
Yeah,
Let's not do that.
you know, maybe if I had the privilege, you know, or benefit of hindsight, I would say no. 2,000 Sioux is a lot.
Yeah.
I
that's
don't
quite a
think
bit.
we're going to do this.
We're probably going to lose.
Yeah, so let's take that opportunity. We things have gone south, but we haven't lost all of our troopers, right?
Right,
So
right.
let's back out of this while we can
Mhm.
and let things calm down.
Yep. Exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. So, anyway, all right. That's our little soapbox bit for today.
I don't know how much it helped. We didn't really make any epiphany
I know.
uh
I don't know.
ideas out there, but you know, here's the thing. It's always worth talking about, you know, and I think that we need to have more conversations and less confrontations.
Yeah.
You know,
Always.
I just think that that's how this has to happen.
Yeah.
Fight the good fight, you know, but when it's not the good fight, you know, it's better to walk away.
True.
You know, it just is. It's better for everybody.
Hmm.
You know, people are getting hurt. It's time to start reevaluating. Maybe we're not doing this right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's our show today. Take it for what it's worth. You know, if you like what we said, yay. If you didn't like what we said, yay. You know, good for you. I appreciate that. You know, I don't claim to know it. You know, I don't even claim to know a little bit about this. Just my perspective. That's just the way I see it. It's just the way you see it.
Yep. Hey, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one and they stink.
Well, yeah. Well, not all of them. So, all right. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully, we'll see you on our next episode. Till then, be safe, be mindful.
Later.
Bye.